Because they hate me and my desire to sleep, Empire Magazine's new issue has just dropped, and along with it a huge number of brand new images from Jurassic World Rebirth and a host of interviews with several cast and production members. I will say there's not a ton of new information, but there are some very interesting little bits in here, and I've pulled out what I think are the highlights, and also very cool new screen grabs. Credit to Jurassic Outpost for sharing the full article on their Twitter. I will link that down below in the description if you want to read the whole thing for yourself. I am just giving you the big bits. Wink. It's too late. Let's start then at the beginning. Wild idea. Part of the article is a spotlight on the Rex and the D-Rex. And here we get our first ever real timeline information for Rebirth's interesting and, at the moment, slightly confusing place in the canonical timeline. The final scene Gareth Edwards plays for Empire in the Rebirth edit suite is actually the film's opening scene. Set 17 years ago, it takes place at an InGen facility where hazmat suit wearing technicians have been tinkering with dino DNA. I was very tempted to do a Mr. DNA voice there. So the D-Rex lab sequence we saw in the trailer is actually the opening scene of the entire film, setting the tone for that genetic testing and mutations gone mad kind of vibe. There were rumours, and I've seen this a lot in the last few weeks, that Zora Bennett, Scarlett Johansson's character, is the character on the left-hand side of the screen. That now seems pretty unlikely, unless she's returning to the island nearly 2 decades later. But the interesting thing, of course, is 17 years ago. Now, Jurassic World Dominion took place in 2022. We know that Jurassic World Rebirth is taking place 5 years after that in 2027. So this event we're seeing here, this D-Rex attack that we're going to witness here, is taking place in 2010. And that's a few years after the opening of Jurassic World, which I think could be important. Because perhaps then InGen, who of course at this point in time in 2010 are working for Masrani, perhaps they were operating this secret facility in the hopes of designing new, more fearsome creatures for Jurassic World. And of course there was a little bit of that dinosaurs as a weapon thing also going on in that same time period. And Masrani always did want more teeth. Well, now he kind of got them. Either way, this confirmation does put to bed some problems with the anachronistic technology that people had. But it does raise another question then. Is there both the old pre-Jurassic Park and new 2010 lab all on this Rebirth Island? We know from the trailer that this place was meant to be the test site essentially for the original Jurassic Park, so it has to have been around and operational since the 1980s. That then doesn't really fit in with this very 2010 modern looking lab. So do they exist together as separate facilities on the same island, or in fact is this InGen facility we're seeing here at the start somewhere else entirely and they moved the D-Rex onto the island after the fact? I'm as curious as George about this, honestly, that cheeky little monkey. I'm going to intersperse the chitty-chatty highlights with some new imagery. For example, this imposing new shot of the Quetzalcoatlus defending its ruin-bound home and nest. You can see Zora and Loomis hiding off to the side, and this is assumedly just before Loomis goes zipping over the edge. I've got to say, the Quetz is looking beautiful here. It's growing on me more and more, and especially in this desaturated and heavily grained imagery, it looks far more threatening than that Dominion one ever did. I kinda still wish they'd made it a Hatzegopteryx, I'm not gonna lie, but honestly the beak design on Quetzalcoatlus is all very speculative anyway. There's no reason it couldn't look like this in theory. I think it's a really nice design. Now we've had the D-Rex, but the other dinosaur spotlight is on the T-Rex. And whilst it doesn't offer any new story information, mainly just hyping up the River Rapids scene, it does talk about the design a little bit. Now Gareth Edwards said this: "It's kind of how, as a kid, I always thought a T-Rex would look. I'm super happy with it." Now I don't necessarily get that vibe. He said he was inspired by things like Valley of Gwangi with the classic Allosaurus. And I will say this Rex does not feel particularly more retro to me than, say, the original Jurassic Park design, but I do think the idea largely here is to lean a little bit into an 80s, 90s aesthetic, because that's when most of the dinosaurs on the island were initially created. Most of them. Next up we have a shot of Gareth in a field. Yay! He's in grass and it seems big. Is that the word I'm looking for? He's in the big grass. He should stay out of the big grass, I think. Oh, and here's Zora falling off a boat. DNA extracting gun in hand and baking in the Malta heat. Half the article, honestly, is about how hot it is in Malta. Her and Loomis are trying to survive what invariably is the Spinosaurus and Mosasaurus attack we glimpsed in the trailer. That leads us to this beautiful new shot, however, this image of the Mosasaurus breaching. As you can see from the bolt coloration, this is indeed the same scene from that previous shot, and hell, it looks very much like this is the next shot from this scene in the trailer. As you can see, the Mosa is falling in the same direction, its body is in the same position as it would be if you'd kind of naturally followed along from this trailer sequence. Perhaps then all of this is going to lead, or is a follow-up to that underwater sequence we saw the other day, the underwater image I should say. Now this Mosa continues to be one of my favourite designs in the entire film. I love that we're seeing this naturalistic breaching sort of animation work here, and really nice animal behaviour, and just generally it is a huge step up to me personally from the previous iteration. And it does lead us, the big wet thing, to a interesting quote from the article after Malta had been brought up. The incredible summer heat in the latter locale was exacerbated by the fact that, with roughly a third of the film taking place on the ocean, they spent weeks in Malta Film Studios' water tank. Now that could be an overzealous, rough estimate on Empire's part, but if not, that is way more than I expected, to say the least. So far, we actually only know for sure of one aquatic scene, and that's the Mosasaurus and Spinosaurus trio attack. Now, I've suggested for a while that there's probably a second Mosasaurus sequence I would imagine coming earlier on in the film, and of course they have to shoot scenes approaching the island and leaving the island, which does appear to be happening via boat, but still, a third is a huge amount of time. That's over 40 minutes spent on the ocean, if that number is accurate. They did, as it says, spend over a month filming the boat sequences though, so there may be credence to this idea. Perhaps those Mosa and Spino sequences are much longer than currently anticipated. A couple more shots for you, Duncan Kincaid and Child looking up at assumedly the D-Rex, probably from the nighttime dock scene from the trailer. A little more excitingly, we also have a shot of Zora and Martin Krebs hiding from something behind and under those newly designed park vehicles. Krebs guarding that clamshell of precious DNA with his life, and I suspect he may do just that actually by the end of the film. Poor Krebs. Peep the retro InGen biogenetics logo on the vehicle. Nothing new on any of this really, beyond that little 17 years teaser, but I'm very eager to see a definitive timeline for Rebirth eventually. Our final little tidbit of info comes with no screenshot, so I'm going to show you my absolute favourite of the bunch, our final new image. This gorgeously atmospheric shot of the group, and they're worn, they're bloodied, they're beaten, walking past the mining facility we've seen a few times by now. Hell, we even saw behind the scenes video just the other day. It's self-shrouded though in cobalt mist. This is the kind of imagery I live for, honestly, and it's the kind of imagery that Edwards excels at. So absorb the prettiness, now let's talk about the Mutadons. Alongside the Distortus Rex we'll also meet the Mutadons. These feathered fiends are a combination of pterosaur and a raptor, so they can fly. They were inspired by bats, Kep says, but the interesting bit to note here is that they are actually feathered. At least somewhat feathered. They're feathered, but they've got bat-like, pteranodon-esque wings. They're going to look utterly bizarre, and I think it's not until we see them we'll know if they're cool or not. Perhaps now that they've been officially talked about, they'll be glimpsed a little bit in that second trailer that definitely exists, right? I'm not just coping, I'm pretty sure it exists. Oh, and there's also a line that apparently the Titanosauruses get amorous. Now, I'm assuming this is maybe like a neck rubbing sort of thing, like what giraffes do, but not full on banging, but who knows, it's a brave new world out there, apparently. Now, if you want to read the whole article, definitely check out Jurassic Outpost's post, but honestly, 90% of it is stuff that we've heard before. Despite that, the new images are beautiful. The 17 years timeline is particularly interesting, I think, as is the apparent huge amount of time on the water, and I guess the sexy Titanosaurs. What do you think about this purported timeline and how it all fits into the film canon so far? Give me your thoughts down below, throw me a like if you're cool, and if you're not cool, this would be like a good first step, basically. And yeah, I should sleep. Thank you very much for joining me. I'll see you all very soon. Cheers, much love as always. Bye-bye.